For years, no one paid any attention to that island. Then, a 16-year-old boy discovered a large pit there. When he examined the surrounding area, he realized that someone appeared to have lowered and buried several extremely heavy objects inside the pit. From that very day until today, countless people have continued digging on that island in search of treasure. They have spent hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars for this purpose. Some people have invested all the savings they earned through an entire lifetime of hard work in an attempt to discover the treasure on the island. Some people have even lost their lives. People are still searching the island for vast amounts of pirate treasure, the Holy Grail supposedly used by Jesus Christ during the Last Supper, or the Ark of the Covenant. Some people also believe that Shakespeare's original manuscripts are hidden somewhere on the island. There is also a belief that the treasure will only be revealed after 7 people have died on the island. So far, 6 people who went in search of the treasure have already died. What exactly is happening on Oak Island? Through this video, I welcome you to the true story surrounding the treasure of Oak Island. A cursed island off the coast of Canada. Long ago, when the British came to conquer the people who lived there, the island's inhabitants decided to fight against the British. However, after being defeated, the islanders are said to have cursed the entire island before leaving it. The island then remained uninhabited for many years. But, completely unexpectedly, in 1795, after a light was seen coming from the island, a boy named Daniel McInnes went onto the island. While walking around the area, he came across a pit. When he carefully examined its surroundings, he noticed that a tree branch near the pit had been cut, and there were marks suggesting that a ship's tackle or equipment had been tied and suspended from the branch. From all of this, he arrived at an assumption. He had heard stories that there were many pirates in this region and that pirates often carried their treasures to different islands and buried them there. Naturally, the first thing he thought was that perhaps pirates had placed their treasure inside this particular pit and left it there. Because of this, he decided to uncover the treasure believed to be hidden in the pit. He brought 2 of his friends to help him with the task. The 3 of them began digging the pit the very next day. They slowly started digging deeper. When they had dug about 2 feet down, they immediately came across a row of stones arranged in a particular pattern. They continued digging. As they dug a little deeper, they noticed marks on both sides of the pit that appeared as though someone had cut into the soil with a pickaxe. They did not stop there. They continued digging. When they reached a depth of 10 feet, they discovered a platform made of oak wood. Their hopes began surging like waves of the sea. They removed the wooden boards and oak logs one by one. Then they continued digging deeper into the pit. They eventually reached a depth of 20 feet. At this point, they again discovered oak logs arranged across the pit. They removed those as well and continued digging. When they reached 30 feet, they once again discovered another wooden platform made of oak. From all of this, they began to understand that this could not simply be something created by nature. Someone had apparently dug here deliberately and placed something inside. However, as far as those 3 boys were concerned, they had already dug as deep as they possibly could. With no other choice, they abandoned the mission. But the story of the Oak Island money pit and the oak platforms found at every 10-foot interval began spreading widely throughout the surrounding region. At the same time, people's curiosity about the island began increasing dramatically. Many people started preparing to go in search of the treasure on Oak Island. The story continued spreading throughout the region. 9 years passed. In 1805, a company called the Onslow Company took up the mission and set out to search for the treasure of Oak Island. They began digging the money pit using relatively more modern equipment and machinery. Just as had happened before, the same thing happened to them. Every time they reached another 10 feet of depth, they discovered oak logs. But along with the oak logs, they also discovered several other things. In some places, they found charcoal. In other places, they found putty, as well as coconut fiber. Finding coconut fiber in this region was extremely strange. The reason was that coconut trees do not grow in Canada. Coconut trees grow thousands of kilometers away from there. Somehow, someone had apparently brought coconut fiber from somewhere far away to this location. Naturally, the curiosity of the people involved in the expedition and those searching for the treasure began increasing even further. They continued digging deeper and deeper. When they reached approximately 90 feet below the surface, they discovered a stone. It was about 2 or 3 feet long and 12 to 14 inches wide, and several strange markings had been carved into it. No one at that time was able to decode or accurately understand what the markings meant or what had been written on the stone. However, many years later, in 1949, it is said that a person named Reverend T. Captain used a code to decipher those symbols. According to the interpretation he supposedly decoded, the message read, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. But the biggest problem is that there is no information about where this stone came from or where it currently is. There is not even a photograph of the stone available today. So, a major question mark remains over whether such a stone was actually discovered at all. Regardless, after finding the stone at a depth of 90 feet, the Onslow Company continued digging without understanding exactly what it meant. Eventually, they reached 93 feet. They decided to stop digging for the day and return the following morning to continue their work. They finished their work and returned to their tents. However, when they arrived at the money pit the next day to continue digging, they were shocked. The pit was completely filled with approximately 60 feet of water. They immediately began taking all the necessary steps to pump the salt water out of the pit. But no matter how hard they tried, they could not accomplish it. They realized that the water inside the pit on the island was somehow connected to the sea. Since they were unable to completely remove the seawater despite their efforts, the Onslow Company eventually abandoned its mission there. Many more years passed. In 1850, a company called Truro arrived on the island. They began taking steps to uncover the mystery of Oak Island and discover its treasure. At this point, they discovered a strange structure. In one part of the island, near the shoreline at a place called Smith's Cove, they discovered 5 stone drains or channels that all converged toward a single point. Coconut fiber and seaweed had been placed over them to prevent mud and sand from entering. From this, they understood that someone appeared to have deliberately constructed a tunnel-like system that provided a direct connection from the seawater to the money pit. In other words, they believed it was a mechanism or trap designed to prevent people from reaching the treasure. Furthermore, the age of the coconut fiber found there was later examined. Some findings suggested that it dated from approximately 1260 to 1400. Later discoveries produced reports suggesting that it could date from a period between approximately AD 780 and 840. In other words, some findings suggested that the coconut fiber could have existed during a period long before Columbus traveled to America. But how did it reach Oak Island, and how was it connected to the island? Some people explain that coconut fiber was widely used on ships in ancient times to protect various materials. It is possible that some ships were damaged or wrecked and eventually reached this island. That is one explanation that has been proposed. In 1857, another group arrived and conducted further research into the money pit. They continued digging and eventually reached a depth of 153 feet. At this point, they discovered a small piece of material on which something had apparently been written using a particular type of ink. More precisely, what they found was parchment made from animal skin, specifically goat skin. 2 letters had been written on it. They appeared to be 6, UI, or perhaps WI. Naturally, this once again generated curiosity and astonishment among the people involved. But no matter how deeply they continued digging, they too failed to recover anything significant from the Oak Island money pit. The mysteries surrounding the treasure of Oak Island continued to spread widely. More and more people continued arriving on Oak Island, spending enormous amounts of money in their attempts to find the treasure. At the same time, the number of people who died while searching for it also continued to increase. The first 2 accidents occurred during the 19th century. One person died when a boiler exploded, while another died after falling into the pit. However, the most tragic incident occurred on August 17, 1965. A man named Robert Restall had been coming to the island for the treasure hunt since 1959. His wife and children had also participated in the treasure hunt with him. He had been spending his entire life's savings on the search for the treasure. Then, one day, while working inside a shaft, he was suddenly affected by poisonous gas. He lost consciousness and fell into the pit. When his son Bobby saw what had happened, he jumped into the pit to rescue him. 2 other people who were with them also witnessed the incident and jumped into the pit in an attempt to rescue them. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, another person who happened to be visiting the site also entered the pit. However, he was able to rescue only one person from the pit. The other 4 people succumbed to death. With that, the number of people who had died while searching for treasure on Oak Island reached 6. Even today, the exact causes surrounding all of these deaths are not fully known. This raises one of the biggest questions: is there actually a treasure on Oak Island, or is there really nothing significant there? When we examine this matter, there are several different theories associated with it. First, let us understand what exactly people have been searching for on this island. The main theory is that pirates who operated throughout this region may have buried their treasure on the island in order to hide and preserve their enormous wealth. Many people continue to believe this. The second theory is connected to the Knights Templar. In 1307, the Templars, who were fleeing from the cruelty of King Philip IV of France, may have hidden the Holy Grail, the cup supposedly used by Jesus Christ at the Last Supper, as well as the Ark of the Covenant somewhere beneath the island. Another major theory connects the island to Shakespeare. According to this theory, the works attributed to Shakespeare were actually written by Sir Francis Bacon and were later published under Shakespeare's name. It is believed by some that the original manuscripts of Shakespeare's works were buried and hidden on this island so that nobody else could find them. So, people have continued searching Oak Island for all these years in the hope of discovering objects that could potentially be worth millions. But is there really something here? Is there actually something inside the money pit? What really happened there? Let us examine the possibilities. Many people have suggested that the pit is actually a sinkhole that formed naturally in the ground. Geology also provides considerable support for this possibility. The reason is that the rocks beneath Oak Island include limestone and gypsum. Naturally, these are types of rock that can dissolve in water. Because of this, many people explain that a large underground cavity may have formed beneath the island, and later the surface above it may have completely collapsed into that cavity, creating the pit known as the Money Pit. There is another angle to this theory as well. John Nichol, a well-known investigative writer, has explained that the entire legend may have been built upon exaggerated reports and wishful thinking. According to this explanation, the oak platforms found inside the pit may simply have been pieces of wood that naturally fell downward and became trapped at different levels when the sinkhole collapsed. Similarly, the large amount of seawater that entered the pit may also have a natural explanation. On any small island, if you dig below the water table, water will naturally enter the excavation. That is a normal geological process, and perhaps that is exactly what happened here. When we come to the stone supposedly found in the pit, there is no definitive evidence for it. There is no solid proof confirming its existence, yet people have continued searching for the treasure based on the story surrounding it. Moreover, the supposed translation of the stone's inscription emerged much later. These claims were made approximately 1.5 centuries after the original events, around 140 years later. Furthermore, when examining the available records and other information, we can find some other interesting details. We mentioned earlier that a 16-year-old boy named Daniel McInnes discovered the Money Pit in 1795. However, when records relating to this claim are examined, some findings suggest that he was not actually a young boy but a businessman. According to these findings, he had already purchased the area around the Money Pit on Oak Island as early as 1788. It was only in 1795 that the stories associated with the pit began emerging. In short, the person we previously mentioned may have been one of those who purchased the land primarily with the intention of making a financial profit. So, I think you can understand where the story is heading and what might actually have happened there. But that is not the end of it. There is no reason to believe that pirates from ancient times possessed the technical knowledge or technology required to dig hundreds of feet underground, construct precise traps, and then successfully hide their treasure inside such a complex system. So, this also provides a significant counterpoint to that theory. Even after all of these explanations, many people still believe that a huge treasure remains hidden somewhere on Oak Island. Most recently, in 2006, American brothers Rick Lagina and Marty Lagina purchased a large portion of the island. Using highly advanced machinery, underground scanning equipment, drilling technology, and various other modern technologies, they began conducting extensive investigations and a full-scale treasure hunt on the island. They also released these investigations as a television series. During their investigations, they were able to discover several things. They found some old coins, pieces of metal, a cross, wooden planks, and evidence of human activity in various parts of the island. But even after 230 years, the most important questions still remain unanswered. What is inside that pit? How did the pit form? Was it created naturally, or was it constructed by humans? Is the treasure supposedly hidden by pirates inside the pit, deliberately buried so that nobody else could find it, still lying there today? These questions continue to remain unanswered. Perhaps the most dangerous treasure is a treasure that may not even exist, because there is no end to the search for it. People will simply continue looking for it. Anyway, we are winding up the video here. I hope you found the video very interesting. After hearing all these details, what do you think? Do you believe there really could be such a treasure on Oak Island? 6 people have already died. If a 7th person dies, will the treasure finally be revealed? What do you think? Could the money pit actually be a naturally formed sinkhole?